this is session 13, verifying and validating requirements, sometimes simply referred to as V and V. Validating and verifying, or verifying and validating, the terms are used interchangeably also. So first validating and then verifying. So what is verification and what is validation, and how do we do that with the requirements? On this is what the agenda is all about. So the agenda is difference between validation and verification, characteristics of good requirements, risk associated with requirements, testing approaches, and requirement traceability metrics. I'm going to share an Excel sheet on RTM, that is requirements traceability metrics. Again, an example to make the concept clear. I'm going to discuss a few things about RTM here in the slide in the session. Plus, I'm going to share a ready Excel sheet also, and a complete example also. So in the mail. So you will go through that, and that will help you because we are building the knowledge right now. Requirement verification and validation. Now, validation. Requirements validation, it checks that the right product is being built. So how do we do that? Simply, we have goals and requirements specified initially, okay, and then we come out with requirement specifications. So if these are matching, goals or requirements, then requirement specification. If the requirement specifications are matching with the requirement goals or objectives, then you say validated. So the right product is being built. Ensure that software being developed or changed will satisfy its stakeholder. This is again validation. We are validating that yes, it will satisfy the stakeholders, and it checks the software requirement specification against a stakeholder goals and requirements. So it is a validation that yes, right product, we are on the right track. That is validation actually. When we say requirement verification, verifications happens after that, like requirement specifications. We have requirement specifications, we are doing the design now, and we are doing the system development also. The system is ready now. Now verification is basically the process or check that the product being built is right. We have developed a right project, right software is already developed. So verification is after the system is designed and developed. That is verification, that we have done it right. Ensures that each step followed in the process of building the software yield the right products, and checks consistency of the software requirements, specification artifacts, and other software development products against the specifications. So what specifications were mentioned, what details were mentioned, have we developed the same software, what was expected out of that? That is actually verification. So this is validation and verification, the difference between the two. And if we understand in terms of the terms which we have studied so far, we have studied all these terms, and we can understand this overlapping concept or testing or validation or verification. These circles and ellipses are specifying, making the things more easier to understand. If you look at verification, we have style checkers, statistics analysis, proofs of correctness, robustness analysis, consistency checking, unit test, integration test, automated testing, regression test, system test, beta test, code inspection. All these comes under verification. If we say validation, it may be customer acceptance test, usability test, regression test, prototyping, modeling, goal analysis, mode or specification inspection, or model checking. And out of which, if we talk about only testing, so you see there are some overlapping terms used for validation as well as verification, and there are some unique things which are not applicable for validation, only applicable for verification. Same way, there are some terms which are only for validation, not applicable for verification. So testing, for example, have some terms or some different type of test which are there in verification as well as validation. So testing is right from validation to verification. Testing is everywhere if you look at. So what testing is applicable when the validation is being done? So we have regression test, system test, beta test, customer acceptance test, usability test. These comes under validation. And then on the same way, we can talk about verification. What test comes under verification? Unit test, regression test, integration test, automated testing, system test, beta test, all comes under verification. So you see, that makes the difference or the comparative study of V and V very easy to understand with the help of the diagram. Okay, now let's look at this example. Domain properties are D. Please look at this carefully. Domain properties, we refer them as D, and these are assumptions about the environment of the system to be. Okay, problem domain, for example. So domain properties, then we have specifications, S represented by S, and finally the solution system, which consists of hardware and software. Okay, and between the hardware and software system solution, we have some common area between problem definition and solution system called interface. So that is basically specifications. Now if we have domain properties D and requirements R, okay, and then specifications S, hardware C, and software P. Now how V and V adhere to that and how it works, let's look at this. Validation question: do we build the right system? If the domain to be, that is excluding the system to be, we are not talking about system to be, the domain to be, if the domain to be has the properties D and the system to be has the properties S, then the requirement R will be satisfied. It is, you can represent it like that: D and S, domain properties, and system to be has property S. If D and S are satisfied, definitely we can say that R is satisfied. All right, so this is basically D and S. If they are met, then requirement are met. Okay, D and S. Now same way, if you look at with respect to the hardware, software, and specifications, then verification question: do we build the right system right? If the hardware has the properties H and the software has the properties P, then definitely the software system requirement S will be satisfied. So we can say that C and P, hardware and software, will lead to the system specifications met, that is C and P will be satisfied. Now if we replace this S in the first equation where D and S was resulting into satisfaction of R, okay, so it will become what? It will become, conclusion will be D, C and P. D, C and P will meet the requirements. So what we need to satisfy is domain properties, hardware and software will ultimately lead to the fulfillment of the requirement. So this is the difference between validation and verification and the overlapping part, and how they help each other and how they are related to each other. This is the comparative study of V and V. Now look at this example. Requirement is reverse thrust. We are talking about an aeroplane, and aeroplane we are talking about the wheels only, and wheels, and whether moving aircraft is moving or not, and how it is related to the runway, wheel thrust, and all that stuff. So reverse thrust shall be only be enabled when the aircraft is moving on the runway. So to stop the aircraft, we are talking about that. So reverse thrust shall only be enabled when the aircraft is moving on the runway. This is requirement. Domain properties, if we look at, deploying reverse thrust in mid-flight has catastrophic effect, so we cannot do that in mid-air because the aircraft has to be on the runway to apply reverse thrust. Now, domain property D2 is wheel pulses are on if and only if the wheel are turning. That wheel pulses will be sent to the aircraft that wheels are turning, and wheels are actually the aircraft is moving or something, wheels are turning. Domain property D3, wheels are turning only if and only if the plane is moving on the runway. Now this requirement or this domain property, the D3 assumption that wheels are turning if and only if the plane is moving on the runway is not correct. If the, for example, if the plane is a hydroplane or an aqua plane, or it is moving on that water, so there is no runway there, right? So assumption D3 is false because the plane may be an hydroplane, or on it may be on a wet runway also, so wheels are not turning. There is a wet runway and wheels are not turning at all, it is skidding. So it is not necessary that wheels are turning if and only if the plane is moving on the runway. So because if the plane is moving on water, then wheels will not turn, right? So therefore this domain property D3 will not be satisfied and assumption D3 is incorrect. And if we say system specifications S, the system shall allow reverse thrust to be enabled if and only if wheel pulses are on. So D1 and D2 still okay, but D3 is not okay, but yes, system specification should have this. So this is conditional example, and I'll make it more clear. So does D1 and D2 and D3 and S, D1, D2, D3 and S results into requirement met? Are the domain assumptions D right? Are the requirement R or specification S what actually is needed, what is really needed? This is the question, and we should get the answer of this after going through this. Characteristics of requirements. A requirement is good if it is verifiable, clear and concise, complete, consistent, traceable, viable, necessary, implementation free. We talked about these characteristics in earlier sessions, but to that extent that yes, we just went through this, and there was one or two slides about the characteristics of requirements. Now we are going to talk about one by one, and how can we ensure that requirements are verifiable, requirements are clear and concise, and requirements are complete, with examples like bad or good. So we'll have a complete analysis. Every characteristic we will study in detail one by one. So think of these characteristics as a series of filters. A good requirement will pass through all these 8 filters which I have mentioned here. So it's going to be something like working like a filter. This is how it's going to work. So what makes, let's understand one by one now. What makes a requirement verifiable? How can we say that requirement is verifiable? There are certain parameters, there are certain tests to it. Yes, requirement is verifiable. How? Let's look at this. A verifiable requirement is stated in such a way that it can be tested by inspection, analysis, or demonstration. We must be able to test it, should be able to test it by inspection, analysis, or demonstration. Make it possible to evaluate whether the system met the requirement, and is verifiable by means that will not contaminate the product or compromise the data integrity. This is, if these characteristics are there in your requirement, then definitely we can say that your requirements are verifiable. And these are, some of the characteristics of requirements. Let's look at a good example and bad example of requirement verifiable. If we say that system must be user friendly, now how should we measure the user friendliness? How can we say that this is not a good requirement, it is user friendly? Simply saying that does not, we cannot verify that whether user system is user friendly or not. It should be stated as given in the good example of same thing in a good way. The user interface shall be menu driven. It shall provide dialog boxes. It shall provide help screens. It shall have radio buttons, drop down list boxes, and spin buttons for user inputs. If we have these individual items, we can say that yes, it is good and it is user friendly. So look at the clarity and the clear explanation of good user requirement and verifiable requirement. So we can simply verify it. If the menu driven is there, we can easily validate it or check it when we have the system in front of us. So we'll simply tick one by one. Menu driven, yes. Dialog box is there, yes. Help screens there, yes. Radio buttons there, yes. So we can verify easily. So we can say that requirements are verifiable. But if we talk about the first part or the bad requirement R1, the system must be user friendly, we will not be able to verify this. So there are no parameters or we cannot validate it. This is an example of a good and a bad verifiability of the requirement. Okay, next is what makes a requirement clear and concise. The next characteristic was clear and concise. Let's look at this example. First, going through this clear and concise requirement, must consist of a single requirement, should be no more than 30 to 50 words in length, must be easily read and understood by non-technical people, and must be unambiguous and not susceptible to multiple interpretations. It should be clear and straightforward, no multiple conclusions or no multiple understanding, and must not contain definitions, descriptions of its use or regions for its need, and finally must avoid subjective or open-ended terms. This is the clear and concise requirement characteristics. Let's look at a good and bad example of clear and concise requirement also. So is this requirement clear and concise? Bad example, all screen must appear in the monitor quickly. This is not clear and concise. How long is quickly? Quickly means 10 seconds or 10 minutes or 5 minutes or 5 seconds or 1 second or what? So we should quantify it to make it clear and concise. So the bad example is, if we convert it into good, it will be when the user accesses any screen, it must appear on the monitor within 2 seconds. So this is how we should mention that. So these examples definitely, I'm sure, will help you in fine tuning your requirements, and you will if you implement these characteristics in your requirements, then yes, you have done a good job. Next, what makes a requirement complete? A complete requirement contains all the information that is needed to define the system function, leaves no one guessing, like for how long or 50% of what. So there should be no guesses, it should be clear, complete. It includes measurement units, maybe inches or centimeters or whatever measurement parameters we can have. So look at this example now. Bad example, on the loss of power, the battery backup must support normal operations. But with the complete requirement, for how long? We are saying that on the loss of power, battery backup should be there, but for how long? So therefore, the requirement is not complete. If we say complete requirement on the loss of power, the battery backup must support the operations for 20 minutes. So this is the completeness of the requirement. Okay. Then consistent. What makes a requirement consistent? A consistent requirement does not conflict with other requirements on the requirement specification. It uses the same terminology throughout the requirement specification, and it does not duplicate other requirements or pieces of other requirements or create redundancy in any way. It should be unique, it should be consistent throughout. And if we look at the examples of consistent requirement, let's look at the bad example. Requirement number 4, electronic batch records shall be part 11 compliant. Requirement 4.7, an ongoing training program for 21 CFR part 11 needs to be established at the sites. Now this part 11 is appearing in two different requirements. So it is not consistent. Here a part 11 is appearing with the 21 CFR. So somewhere these two specifications, whatever they are not misleading, they are misleading and they are not consistent. Do these refer to the same regulations or different ones? Because they are appearing at two places, one independently, individually, and second with some other terminology. So this is bad example, this is not good example. If we want to specify, we should specify like this: the electronic batch record shall be 21 CFR part 11 compliant. So 21 CFR part 11. So this is one complete term and everywhere it should be same. Same way, requirement 4.7, ongoing training program for 21 CFR part 11. We are same way, we are using the same term here also, needs to be established at the site. So this is consistency. We have throughout everywhere the term is used is the same. It's not misleading, it's not redundant, and it's not ambiguous. So this is consistent requirement example. Now traceable. What makes a requirement traceable? A traceable requirement has a unique identity number, cannot be separated or broken into smaller requirements, can easily be traced throughout or through a specification, design and testing, and change control on requirement level. These are traceable requirements. Now example, if we say system must generate a batch and report and discrepancy report when the batch is aborted. Now how can we combine? We cannot combine two different requirements in one. As I said, they should be atomic in nature, there should be one requirement at a time. So the system must generate a batch end report and discrepancy report when the batch is aborted. We need to break it down into two different requirements because they are two different requirements. We cannot combine them into one. How this uniquely identified? If the requirement change later so that it does not require a discrepancy report, then how will you trace back? So you can delete it. So therefore the problem is you cannot have two requirements in one. You cannot use and or these kind of things. They should be separate. So if you change it to good requirement, it will be requirement number 6, V1, the system must generate a batch and report when the batch is aborted. And requirement number 7, the system must generate a discrepancy report when the batch is completed or aborted. So we are broken down the requirement into two. So this is traceability of the requirement. Then viability. A viable requirement can be met using existing technology, can be achieved within the budget, can be met within the schedule. It's something the organization has the necessary skills to utilize, will be used by the end users, and finally must be helpful to build the system. So these are viability parameters of the requirements. Now viable or feasibility, let's look at this example now. If we say the replacement control system shall be installed with no disruption to production. Can we really have it? We are replacing the control system. Will there be no disruption at all in the production? It is impossible. So this is unrealistic expectation. So what should be expected? The good example will be the replacement control system shall be installed causing no more than 10 days of production disruption. This is again quantifying the requirement in order to make it feasible or viable. Necessary. What makes a requirement necessary? A necessary requirement is one that must be present to meet the system objective and is absolutely critical for the operation of the system. Leads to a deficiency in the system if it is removed. And look at the example now. All desktop PCs for the project must be configured with 512 MB of memory, DVD-ROM, CD read-write, multifunction drive, and a 21-inch flat screen monitor. This is definitely not required for all the PCs. So you cannot use this as a necessary requirement for the entire software, entire project. Good example would be the desktop PCs for the developers on the project must be configured with 512 MB of memory, DVD-ROM, configuration drive, 20-inch. So we are talking about developers now. End user don't need this configuration. So it should specify the necessary wherever it is possible. Free of implementation details. A requirement that is free of implementation details defines what functions are provided by the system. Does not specify how a function can or should be implemented, and allows the system developers to decide what technology is best suited to achieve the function. So this is implementation free. If we talk about this example, after 3 unsuccessful attempts to log on, a JavaScript routine must run and lock the user out of the system. Now, why Java? And do we actually need only Java, or there is no other alternative? So specifying the term JavaScript routine, is it actually concerned how the requirement will be implemented? That should not be the case. So therefore it is not implementation free. Free of implementation. So we need to change it. It should be like, after 3 unsuccessful attempts to log on, the user must be locked out of the system. That's simple. So no technology mention should be there in that kind of this. So this is another characteristic of a requirement. So we have studied all the 8 characteristics of requirements with examples. Now, what are the risks associated with requirements? Where are the possibilities of errors or risk? Risk factors are organized by the requirements subdisciplines like elicitation, analysis, specifications, verification, and management, because risk is everywhere. So we have to be clear and concise in order to minimize the risk. Risk can be at every point, every step. So therefore, to have error free or risk free environment, we need to be careful at each of these steps in the system development. So first, for example, requirement elicitation, wherein we talk about product vision and scope. The scope creep issue is a risk, and it occurs if the team member does not have a clear shared understanding of what the product is supposed to do or to be. Time spent on requirement development, again this is in the requirement elicitation only. So time spent on requirement development, tight project schedule often pressure managers into glossing over the requirements. So a rough guideline is to spend about 15% of your project effort on the requirement development activities. So these are the risks involved with requirements at the time of requirement elicitation. Unstated requirements might be there. The customer might hold implicit expectations, or we can say are understood. I have been facing this challenge right from beginning, that my customer always come out with the statement, this was understood. So he never share exact requirement in advance and expect me to do everything on its own. So this is very crucial, I would say, and this happens most of the time, that unstated requirements comes into picture. Try to identify and record any assumption the customer might be taking. So you should talk to the customer, and you should obtain the requirement from him in terms of understanding that yes, there is no assumption and everything is on paper now, black and white. Requirement analysis, requirement prioritization. Ensure that every requirement, feature or use case is prioritized and allocated to a specific product release or implementation stage. So this is a requirement analysis, risk. If you don't prioritize your requirement, and again you will be into a problem. Evaluate the priority of every new requirement against the existing body of work remaining to be done, so that you can make clever trade-off decisions. Technical difficult features. This is again a risk involved. Evaluate the feasibility of each requirement to identify those that might take longer to implement than planned. Use your project status tracking to watch for requirements that are falling behind the implementation schedule and take corrective actions as early as possible. So these are an analysis related risk in the requirements. And then we may have this unfamiliar technologies, methods, tools or hardware at the time of analysis of the software. Don't underestimate the learning curve of getting up to the speed with the new technologies or techniques that are needed to satisfy certain requirements. Identify those high risk requirement early, because this is again a risk. If you don't if you are not familiar with the technology or methods or tool being used in the solution, again you will may not get the right kind of system development done. Allow sufficient time for false starts, learning, experimentation and prototyping. So these are risk related to the requirements at the time of analysis. Then requirement specification related risk. Requirement understanding. Different understandings of the requirement by the developer and the user may lead to expectation gaps. So this is again a risk involved. So formal inspection of requirements document by team including developers, testers and customers can mitigate the risk, because ultimately you need to minimize the risk, minimize the gap between the requirement and the final development, and that you can do from the specification, expectation, specification, then specification, then development. Trained and experimented requirements analyst will ask the right questions and the right better specification. So requirement understanding should be very clear. So this is another risk involved, and this is how you can overcome of that risk of understanding the requirement. Design included in requirement. Design approaches included in software requirement specification document place unnecessary constraints on the options available to developers and can inhibit the creation of optimal design. Review the requirement to make sure that they emphasize what needs to be done to solve the business problem rather than stating how it will be solved. You are not going to talk about how it will be solved. What needs to be solved should be your objective and the question. These are requirement specification related risk. Then requirement verification. Unverified requirements, inspecting at lengthy SRS, writing test cases very early in the development process may appear fastidious. Include the time and resources of these quality activities in the project plan. So this is how you can minimize the verification related risks. Same way we have requirement management. Changing requirement, scope creep can be reduced by using project vision and scope document as the benchmark for approving changes. And then collaborative requirement elicitation process with extensive user involvement can reduce scope creep by almost half. A quality control practice that detects the requirements errors early can reduce the number of modifications requested later on. To reduce the impact of changing requirements, deter implementation or defer the implementation of those requirements that most likely to change until they are pinned down and designed for modifiability. So these are requirement management related risk and how to minimize that and how to reduce that. Requirement change process, risk from the way changes to the requirement are managed include not having a defined change process, using an ineffective change mechanism, and permitting changes to be made without following the process. You will need to develop a culture and discipline to change the management at all levels. So a change process should be proper, and to minimize the gap or minimize the risk, you should follow these steps. Then requirement management related continued risk involved in that. Unimplemented requirements. The requirements traceability matrix helps to avoid overlooking any requirement during design, construction, or testing. It also helps ensure that requirement is not implemented by multiple developers because of the inadequate communication within the project. So therefore, a requirement traceability matrix is going to be of a great help to the developers and the business analyst, and it will save a lot of duplication or a lot of extra work, and you will not be able to overlook any requirement because you are mapping down and verifying each and every at every stage all the requirement. Expanding project scope. If requirements are poorly defined initially, further definition can expand the scope of the project. The project resources that were allocated according to the initial requirements might not be adjusted as the true scope of user needs becomes unknown. To mitigate this risk, plan on a phased or incremental delivery process. So these are requirement management related risks. So this is how you can minimize the risk and what are the risks involved. So you have to be careful at every stage, right from beginning to end. Software test plan components. Now there are testing. Now once the requirements are decided, we need to talk about the testing part. The components are testing process, requirement traceability, items to be tested, the schedule of testing, the recording procedures for testing, testing hardware and software requirements, and testing constraints. There are different approaches for testing beyond the scope of our training, because we are not testers, we are not going to do the testing. This is for system development testing. Only knowledge or basic knowledge is required up to this level what I'm discussing right now. Functional testing, we have different type of functional testing, like black box techniques are there. Then we have structural testing, white box techniques are there. Integration testing, incremental black box techniques are there. Object oriented testing, we have cluster or thread testing techniques are there. Testing is different altogether, and for it is after the development has happened, and does not come under the profile of business analyst. It is just different testing techniques. I just wanted to write down here to make it clear that what different techniques we have. Going into the details is beyond the scope of this training. Requirement traceability matrix. A requirement traceability matrix, RTM, is a table, usually a spreadsheet, where you can link the test cases to the requirement and vice versa. In one column you place the requirement name, and in the other the name of the test case that tests the requirement. An RTM is essential in large or complex project with many requirements, but a tester in a small project might also find useful to create one just to help them organize themselves. I have done that in many of my own projects, and see this Wikipedia article for example of a very simple RTM. I am clicking on that and sharing the screen with you. This is the traceability matrix. You can go through this, and a simple example, this is how the test cases and the requirements are met, because they are just numbers, and the identity numbers, or the implicitly the IDs are given here in the matrix. They are met, tick marks are done, that's it. Okay, so this is a requirement traceability matrix. This is a simple example, very simple example of understanding the traceability matrix. That's all for this session. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, friends. Thanks for watching this session.